Darkness hangs heavy over the surface of the deep. A chaotic ocean waiting for a voice. A grammatical placeholder. A dusty old way of saying, and then the next thing happened. But if you look closer at the root, the eternal God did not lose control of Naomi's timeline. The same presence that commanded the light in Genesis is currently operating in the shadows of Moab. The I Am is quietly weaving a tragedy together to position a Moabite widow named Ruth in exactly the right barley field, at exactly the right hour, to meet a man named Boaz, to spark a bloodline that will eventually crown a king named David. God does not only invade time with thunder, he invades it with famine. The phrase anchors the quiet grief of a widow. But centuries later, when that widow's royal bloodline completely collapses and her descendants are dragged away in chains, the word does not whisper. It rips the sky entirely in half. You know exactly what it feels like when the chronological sequence of your life is violently derailed. You build a carefully structured plan for your career, your marriage, or your family, and you expect the timeline to tick forward seamlessly, exactly as you mapped it out on the calendar. But then a sudden phone call delivers a medical diagnosis, or a foundational relationship shatters in a single afternoon, and suddenly you are sitting in a desolate landscape you do not recognize, mourning the future you thought you were going to inhabit. You sit by the edge of your own foreign river, of the word itself. At what actually detonates on the page, immediately after this phrase is used, you start to realize the ancient writers feeling the heavy, suffocating weight of a life that did not go according to the script. You are carrying the deep, physical ache of an exile, breathing in the dry, bitter ash of disappointment, wondering if the author of the story has simply put the pen down and walked away. If you are in that specific season of disruption right now, you are sitting at the exact spiritual coordinate of a 30-year-old man in the 6th century BC. Ezekiel was born to be a priest. By the time he turns 30, he is supposed to be wearing pure linen garments, standing in the marble courts of the Jerusalem temple, smelling the thick, sweet smoke of burning frankincense as he serves the God of Israel. Instead, his city has been crushed by a Babylonian siege. He is a prisoner of war, sitting in the cold mud by the Chebar River, surrounded by weeping refugees who have lost their homes, their wealth, and their dignity. His timeline is completely, irreversibly destroyed, and it is right there, in the mud of a Babylonian internment camp, that the ancient trigger word detonates. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month. We're not just moving a plot forward, they were setting off a flare. This phrase is not a transition, it is a collision. On the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. Vayehi. He is not in the holy city. He is not in a sacred building. He is sitting in the absolute lowest, darkest, most humiliating moment of his entire existence. And yet, the divine timeline collides with his reality anyway, tearing the sky open with a violent wind from the north and a blinding, flashing fire that illuminates the foreign dirt. This invasion changes how we have to view our own shattered plans. The divine presence is not a reward for perfect geographical placement. It is a targeted invasion of our darkest possible coordinates. When your timeline collapses, the I Am does not wait for you to rebuild the temple before he speaks. He brings the fire of the temple directly to your exile. He proves that human tragedy cannot stop the forward momentum of divine time. For centuries, this specific Hebrew word anchored the Jewish understanding of God's movement in history. But when the page turns from the Old Testament to the New, the landscape completely changes. The Roman Empire paves the roads. The Greek language takes over the Mediterranean world. The real question of this repeated phrase isn't what happens next. It is this: what does it look like when divine time invades human time? And you might naturally assume the ancient, invisible trigger word is simply lost in the cultural translation. But a physician named Luke knew exactly what he was doing. And the Greek word he selects to carry this weight is about to tear the heavens open all over again. An old priest steps into the holy place. The golden altar glows. Sweet smoke rises toward the dark stone ceiling. A crowd prays in the hot sun outside. An angel steps out of the shadows. 400 years of absolute prophetic silence snap in half. Egeneto, and it came to pass that while he executed the priest's office, there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord. A carpenter wades into the muddy Jordan River. The cold water rushes past his waist. He lowers his head. He prays. The blue sky literally tears wide open. A dove descends. A voice booms over the riverbank. Egeneto. Now it came to pass, when all the people were baptized, that Jesus also being baptized, and praying, the heaven was opened. Shepherds sit in the dark Judean hills. The sheep bleat in the cold wind. A blinding, terrifying light crashes into the pasture. An army of angelic soldiers fills the black sky. Egeneto. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, we are a species completely bound by the clock. We wait in long lines. We watch our hands wrinkle. We stay awake, staring at the ceiling. The shepherds said one to another, "Let us now go." 3 fishermen sleep on a high mountain. The night air is freezing. They wipe the dust from their eyes. They wake up. A human face shines like raw lightning. 2 dead prophets stand talking in the dirt. Egeneto. And it came to pass. He took Peter and John and James and went up into a mountain to pray. Luke is a highly educated physician. He writes in Greek. He knows how to craft smooth, classical, elegant syntax. But when he sits down to write his gospel, he deliberately breaks classical rules. He adopts a foreign rhythm. He pulls directly from the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. When those ancient Jewish scholars translated the Hebrew trigger word vayehi, they chose the Greek verb egeneto. It carries the exact same weight. It means to come into being. And Luke drops this word into his gospel like an anvil. He uses it to introduce the birth. He uses it to frame the baptism. He uses it to launch the transfiguration. He is doing exactly what Moses did in the wilderness. He is doing exactly what Ezekiel did in Babylon. He is pointing a finger at the human calendar. He is declaring a divine collision. This is not a Greek stylistic choice. It is a Hebrew theological weapon. Luke is demanding that his readers hear the ancient echo of Genesis chapter 1, terrified about tomorrow. And we carry the heavy, unchangeable stones of yesterday. We live in chronological time, ticking forward, second by second. The exact same voice that commanded the cosmic light is now walking the dirt roads of Galilee in sandals. The same I Am that shook the desert mountain is now touching lepers, eating with traitors, and bleeding in a garden. The Eternal is no longer just speaking from a burning bush. The Eternal has taken on flesh. But the ultimate collision of this timeline is still coming. And it will not happen on a mountain of glowing light. It will happen in a room with a locked door. When the calendar of human history feels like it has completely stopped breathing. But what happens between the lightning strikes? When you compress thousands of years of ancient history into a single leather-bound book, it is easy to suffer from a chronological illusion. You flip a paper page, and you travel from a burning bush to a parted sea in 5 seconds. You read 1 chapter of Luke, and you jump from a blinding angelic choir to a tearing sky in the space of a single breath. It makes it feel like the biblical characters lived in a perpetual state of supernatural interruption. But the reality of human history is mostly waiting. It is the agonizing stretch of silent years. It is Abraham staring at the stars for a quarter of a century, watching his skin wrinkle and his wife's hair turn gray, waiting for a single promise to materialize. It is 400 years of back-breaking slavery in Egypt, unable to rewind or fast forward. But the biblical authors understood something profound about how heaven operates. They believed that God does not wear a watch, generations being born and buried in the dusty brickyards, never once hearing the word vayehi spoken out loud. It is the hollow, deafening silence between the last prophet of the Old Testament and the first cry of a baby in a Bethlehem cave. Most of our lives are lived in that exact same gap. We live in the waiting room of history. You know the feeling of the heavy, agonizing drip of ordinary time. You sit in a vinyl hospital chair, listening to the rhythmic, hollow ticking of a plastic wall clock, waiting for a doctor to walk through the door. You stare at the cold, blue glow of a phone screen in a dark bedroom, waiting for an apology that never arrives. You pray for a collision. You beg for the sky to open. And all you get is a quiet Tuesday morning. When the timeline stretches out and the divine trigger stays silent, it is easy to believe the clock has simply won. But the grammar of the ancient text teaches us how to read the silence. The root word haya does not just mean to act. It means to be. The I Am is not only present when the mountain is on fire, he is present in the long, quiet, unrecorded decades. He exists outside the timeline, in the eternal present. And when that eternal reality pierces our chronological reality, the writers do not just casually report it, when absolutely nothing seems to be happening. The biblical writers used the trigger word to mark the explosions, but the explosions themselves were meant to prove that the entire timeline, even the silent parts, belongs exclusively to Him. The silence of God is not an abandonment of the calendar. It is the incubation of the next collision. The disciples felt that agonizing silence on a Saturday in Jerusalem. The sky had gone dark on Friday. A massive stone had been rolled across a tomb, scraping violently against the limestone. They were locked in an upper room, breathing stale air, terrified of the Roman soldiers marching outside, believing the human timeline had just violently ended the divine story. They thought time had run out, but Sunday morning was coming. And the final movement of this ancient phrase is about to permanently rewrite the end of the human clock. The chaotic ocean waited in absolute darkness, and a spoken word shattered the vacuum. A nation of slaves marched into a burning desert, and a mountain shook with a trumpet blast. A widow fled a starving barley field, and the bloodline of a king was quietly forged in the dust. A captive priest wept by a Babylonian river, and the heavens tore open to bring the fire into exile. They mark it. They signal it. They use a specific, rhythmic word to announce that the veil has just been torn and heaven is stepping. A carpenter waded into the muddy Jordan, and a dove descended to anoint the eternal king. 3 fishermen slept on a freezing mountain, and a human face shone with raw lightning. A massive stone sealed a tomb on a silent Friday, and the calendar of death was permanently broken on Sunday morning. One ancient phrase, one eternal God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the famine. The fact that the ultimate marker of divine collision wasn't just reserved for splitting seas and cosmic explosions. It was dropped right onto a starving family staring at the bottom of an empty earthen jar. The divine fingerprint was resting exactly on a widow, sweeping red dust from a stone floor she would never see again. It means heaven does not need a spectacle to invade your history. If you are in a season where the clock feels like a prison, where you are sitting in the agonizing drip of ordinary time, wondering if the author of the story has put the pen down and walked away, remember the root of the word. Haya, I am. Your timeline does not belong to your tragedy. It does not belong to your silence. It belongs exclusively to the eternal present. The silence you are sitting in is not an abandonment. It is the incubation of a new collision onto the dirt. To feel the weight of this invisible trigger, you cannot start in the middle of the human story. You have to go back. And may the God who has never once lost track of a single second walk with you through your quietest waiting room and speak a reality into your dark water that you could not have created on your own. If this opens something in you, subscribe, leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is sitting in their own waiting room, desperate for the sky to tear open. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. A widow packs her meager belongings in the hill country of Moab, sweeping red dust from a stone floor she will never see again, to the very first time the sound was ever made. Before there were kings to fail, before there were prophets to weep, before there was even a sun in the sky to cast a shadow, we construct reality with our hands, but we only describe it with our mouths. When a human speaks, the vocal cords vibrate, pushing air out, to apply a label to something that is already sitting in the room. You point at a tree, you say the word, and you establish a shared understanding of a piece of wood and leaves. Our language is entirely descriptive. We need the object to exist before we can attach the syllables to it. But the ancient Hebrew mind understood the divine voice as something fundamentally different. When you open to the first chapter of Genesis, you are not just reading a sequence of events. You are being introduced to an entirely different physics of language. The text describes a universe, submerged in total darkness, an uninhabitable ocean without shape or boundary. And then, a sound breaks the vacuum. Let there be light. In the original Hebrew, this command is exactly 2 words, Yehi, or, and what immediately follows is the very first appearance of our hidden pattern. And there was light. Vayehi or. This is the genesis of, and it came to pass. It is the exact same root word. A king paces on a cedar balcony in Jerusalem, feeling the cool evening breeze right before he looks down and makes a decision. God says, Yehi, let it be. And the fabric of reality instantly responds with Vayehi, and it was. The light did not gradually dawn. The photons did not slowly warm up the dark waters. The text paints a picture of instantaneous obedience to a sovereign command. The darkness shatters, replaced by a blinding, radiating brilliance that creates the first morning in the history of the cosmos. The first time this phrase echoes in the text. It is not serving as a transition between 2 mundane historical events. It is the sound of reality bending to the will of its maker. Creation is not a construction project. It is the materialization of a spoken intent. We experience history as a slow grind of cause and effect. A king makes a terrible treaty. An army marches across a border. A famine starves a village. One domino falls and strikes the next, creating a long, predictable chain of human misery and triumph. But the Hebrew writers refused to accept that the chain was unbroken. They believed the sequence could be interrupted by the one who set the board up in the first place. When the ancient scribes recorded the history of their people, they carried this specific grammatical architecture with them. They knew that Vayehi was not just a historical marker. It was a theological declaration. Every time they wrote it, they were quietly reminding the reader that the exact same power that spoke, that will bathe his family in blood. A priest stands by the Chebar River in Babylon, listening to the rushing water, surrounded by exiled families. The stars into the blackness was currently operating in the messy, violent timeline of human history. They used it to signal that what was about to happen on the page was not the result of human scheming or political coincidence. The timeline was being hijacked by the eternal. But you do not only see this phrase when galaxies are being formed. The true weight of this pattern emerges when you leave the cosmic heights of creation and step down into the harsh, suffocating grit of a wandering desert nation. Dust chokes the air. 2 million people march through a burning desert. Sandals wear thin against sharp rocks. Water skins run dry. Children cry in the punishing heat. The sun beats down on a nation of former slaves. They are exhausted. They are afraid. The human timeline in the wilderness is a mess of anxiety, hunger, and complaining. They stare at the horizon and see nothing but sand. But then the phrase interrupts, Vayehi. And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning, that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount. The sky turns violently black. Lightning shatters the dark. A trumpet blasts louder than any human lung could blow. Smoke billows like a massive furnace. The sharp smell of burning ozone and hot rock fills the camp. God steps onto the mountain, who have forgotten the sound of temple songs. Thousands of years separate these scenes. Different empires rise and collapse around them. The English translation smooths this phrase out. It makes it sound like a polite, archaic update. But in the original Hebrew text of Exodus and Numbers, this word strikes like a hammer on an anvil. It hits right before every massive paradigm shift in the desert. The silver trumpets blow. The cloud lifts. The Ark of the Covenant moves forward. Vayehi. Moses lifts a wooden staff. The sea splits into towering, liquid walls. The wind howls through the dry seabed. Vayehi. The people wake up in the freezing desert morning. The ground is covered in white, flaky frost that tastes like honey. Vayehi. The ground splits wide open. Rebellious leaders fall into the dark earth. Screams echo in the camp as dirt swallows them whole. Vayehi. The phrase appears over and over. It strikes before miracles. It strikes before disaster. It signals that the normal, predictable laws of nature have been temporarily suspended. This is not a casual marker of time. It is the rhythm of divine intervention. Israel is learning a completely new way to understand history. In Egypt, time was measured by the annual flooding of the Nile and the brutal decrees of a pharaoh. Time was cyclical. Time was a trap. But out here in the empty, brutal, wild, they are learning that the timeline belongs exclusively to Yahweh. He can pause it. He can bend it. He can invade it whenever he chooses. And he announces his arrival with the exact same sound he used to ignite the sun. Different generations are born and buried in the dust. But in the original Hebrew text, every single one of these moments is locked together. But to truly feel the shock wave of this phrase, you cannot just look at the spectacular events it triggers. You have to look at the anatomy of the word itself. You have to take the Hebrew root apart. And the secret hiding inside its spelling changes exactly how you read the rest of the Bible. If you open a classic English translation of the Bible, you will find the phrase, "and it came to pass over 1,000 times." But if you were to unfurl an ancient animal's skin scroll, running your finger over the heavy, black ink of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 1, you would not find a clunky 5-word phrase. The phrase translated "it came to pass" is exactly one Hebrew word, vayehi. And the etymology of this specific word is the hinge upon which the entire biblical narrative swings. Vayehi comes from the Hebrew root verb haya, which fundamentally means to be, to exist, or to become. It is a word that holds both a state of reality and a forward motion. But here is the detail that most readers completely miss. In biblical Hebrew, there is absolutely no grammatical requirement to use this word to tell a story. By the exact same phrase. 5 English words. 3 syllables in Hebrew. Most people read right past it. If a king builds a wall, the standard Hebrew syntax simply says, "The king built the wall." You do not need to say, "and it came to pass." The king built the wall. It is technically redundant. So when a Hebrew scribe forces vayehi into a sentence, they are making a deliberate theological choice. And the reason lies in the root itself. Haya is not just a common verb. It is the exact same root word from which God derives his own personal covenant name in Exodus 3. When Moses stands barefoot in the dirt before a burning bush and asks for a name, God says, "I am WHO, I am Ehe Hashir Ehe." The root is Haya. The name is Yahweh. If realizing that the very DNA of God's own name is woven into the grammar of history stirs something inside of you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. The scribes were not forced by grammar to use this word. They used it as a marker of divine presence. Every time they attached vayehi to an earthly event, they were quietly attaching. You have probably heard it read from pulpits so often that it has become background noise. It is the most common transitional phrase, the "I am" to the timeline. They were loudly declaring that history is not an empty sequence of random political shifts and human accidents. The author of time is actively participating in the events on the page. Vayehi is not a passive description of past time. It is the active fingerprint of a present God. It makes absolute sense that this divine fingerprint would anchor the splitting of a sea or the shaking of a mountain. We expect God to step into the massive, cosmic, earth-shattering moments of history. But the true shock of this word is that it does not only appear when empires fall, it appears when a family runs out of bread, The sky does not break open. No trumpet blasts. No mountain shakes. The sun simply bakes the Judean hills. The barley stalks in Bethlehem, a town whose name literally translates to the house of bread turned brown and brittle. The dirt cracks. A man named Elimelech stares at the bottom of an empty earthen jar. He listens to the quiet, desperate breathing of his wife, Naomi, and their 2 sons. The hunger in their bellies is a sharp, physical ache. They pack up their meager lives. They walk away from the promised land, feeling the harsh, salty wind blow off the Dead Sea, descending into the foreign territory of Moab, in the traditional English Bible, appearing well over 1,000 times. Most people assume it is just ancient narrative glue. The Book of Ruth opens with this devastating, ordinary human tragedy, and the very first word of the scroll is the exact same trigger, Vayhi. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. Why use the marker of divine collision here? There is no supernatural spectacle on the page. A family is just starving. They are making a desperate immigration choice just to survive the season. And yet, the ancient author intentionally drops the divine fingerprint right on top of their hunger. We assume the eternal only invades the chronological when something spectacular happens. We look for the I am in the parting of seas and the shaking of earth. But the text refuses to let us limit heaven's movement to the miraculous. This famine is not a random ecological disaster. It is the quiet, invisible turning of a divine wheel. The family settles in Moab. 10 years grind by. Elimelech breathes his last. The 2 sons die. 3 widows are left standing in the foreign dirt. You can hear the raw, guttural sound of Naomi weeping in the dust. Her chest heaves with a grief so heavy she demands her friends stop calling her by her given name, changing it instead to Mara Bitter. It feels like a story of absolute, total abandonment. But the Vayhi sitting at verse 1 changes everything about how you read her tears.